Welcome to the Harnessing Happiness podcast. Upbeat vibes generated and transferred to you. Now here's your host, Sarah J Naylor.
Hello and welcome to Harnessing Happiness with myself, Sarah J Naylor. Thank you so much for dropping on by and taking time to listen to this episode and my podcast episodes generally. Really appreciate you listening. So today I have with me Rob Beers, and Rob and I have known each other for quite some time now, but I'm going to hand over to him so he can introduce himself fully and then we can dig in and get on with the chat. So over to you, Rob.
Thank you, Sarah. Where shall I start? My name's Rob Beers. I'm an England Athletics event performance coach. I've been running about 12 years. I've been a run leading for about 10 years. I've been a coach for about 8 years. I'm one of the most decorated and successful coaches in the East Midlands. One time I had the biggest club for recreational running in the UK. The most important thing for me is to get as many people out there and running as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what you do in a very different way, really, don't you, Rob? Because, I mean, obviously you are really passionate about getting people out and running correctly as well, as I have discovered since I've been working with Rob, because I was what was affectionately known as a heel striker, doing tarmac slapping, as Rob likes to call it. And really, although I had started to embrace some trail running myself, we've been doing a lot more running together, and Rob's been sort of teaching me how to run correctly. So that's really part of your passion, as well as trail running and, of course, the marvellous head torch running and sort of culvert running as well. So come on in, Rob, expand further into sort of this area of what you actually do. Okay,
so as a coach, it will be not about just getting you running for a certain amount of time as the very popular Couch to 5K app will do. It's about not getting you injured, because having taught Couch to 5K for so many years, the amount of people who will drop off by week 7 is absolutely tremendous. Most of that is through injury. So getting people to run actually technically right is of the utmost importance, because that time on the bench, which any runner will tell you, is the time when heads start going down. It can be very, very depressing for runners. So the less time you can spend on the bench, the better. And that can all be done by running more technically perfect.
You know, when you're sort of talking about sort of technically perfect running, so how would you describe a technically perfect runner's way to run? What is the sort of the ideal format? How, you know, if you were to describe it quite simply?
This should really be on England Athletics' first page when you go in, but unfortunately it isn't. So basically it will be what we know as a triple extension. It will be the high hips, dorsiflex foot and bent knee,
right,
90 degrees.
So
yeah.
I was going to say, because for dorsiflex, I mean, it took me a while from yoga actually to learn what dorsiflex was. And then actually at the time, Darcy Bustle was on Strictly Come Dancing. So I used to say, well, the opposite way was a Darcyflex. But a dorsiflex is the foot at a 45-degree angle, is that correct?
Yeah, with the toes pulled back and making sure that you're landing underneath the hip, ideally in a midfoot or forefoot strike with every time. It does get quite technical, the intricacies, but it can be quite interesting.
So it's sort of being that balance. And I know from the running that we've done together, I mean, I used to be that heel striker, that one that, funnily enough and strangely enough, is actually photographed so often on the front of these running magazines, which is really quite bizarre, because you're talking about running magazines, and obviously you just mentioned England Athletics, but whenever you see brochures and magazines, you've always got this sort of archetypal person running with their foot dorsiflexed, but going to go down and land on it on the heel. And as you said to me, that is a braking motion. So that's not good for the body, is it?
It's absolutely awful for the body, and nobody wants them. The long-term effects are, you could be under the knife, but short-term effects are things like bursitis, back pain, hip pain, ankle pain, because the body is basically out of alignment. Basically, every time your foot hits the ground, there's 2.5 times your body weight, at least. Some people will say it's 4 times. So if you think about landing on bone at 2.5 times your body weight every time, rather than that lovely pad, what's the effects on that? The shock and shudder on your body is going to be massive.
The other point that is something that makes me laugh, because obviously you point it out and my partner Gareth points it out as well, is people that box when they run.
Yes, crossing the body. I was always told about the invisible zip, which you shouldn't cross. But yeah, people doing very much like a hornpipe type motion with the hands. Where should the hands be? The hands are usually best, I find. I usually teach in and out of the pocket, so they're not crossing. I said not actually in the pocket, but you know.
But they're sort of going down to the side of the leg,
Yes.
and sort of going in and out of the pocket, in and out of the pocket. Because as you said to me, when you are swinging your body, you're using your energy in the wrong
energy. Yes,
in the wrong place. So yes, I mean I've been, since Rob's taught me better running style, and we go out and do a lot of trail running, because that's another passion of yours, isn't it? Really,
yes.
sort of getting people out and teaching
why
them trail
would you want
running.
to make running any harder than it is? But
Well, I see what I like about trail running, the fact that you get all these lovely natural breaks and opportunities to take photographs, and quite often jump on and do a bit of a Facebook Live. But you take people off, and you do a huge amount of history when you're going out running as well, don't you? Because you're so knowledgeable about the local landscape and further afield as well. But you take a real interest in what is not just in nature, but what's been there before, because there's so much history, particularly obviously as we are in the UK, there's so much history to our country.
I was taken out by my parents as a child everywhere, and encouraged to ask questions. If not, I was told things, and a lot does stay in there. So if you're going somewhere new, isn't it nice to learn something about, you know, why this reservoir was here, or what that mound used to be an ancient castle or something. I just think it just makes the journey of going out somewhere just a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, and there is, as I say, so much history. I mean, we were only out the other day, and you'd obviously been doing some research into a post that you were going to write for social media, and you were saying, well, did you know there'd been a sort of prisoner of war camp in a local village? And it's things like that the history, as time and years go by, you lose that information because the stories get lost, and it's just not available information. I mean, that's just one thing, but there's all sorts of information and history. I mean, you were out in Derby. Where was it just recently? And there was a disused watermill, and there's just
Huntingdonshire. Yes.
Yeah.
Fotheringhay Castle, which was birthplace of Richard III, execution place of Mary Queen of Scots. Yeah.
So much history, but you share this with the people that you take out running, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. My job is to inspire people about outside. I don't know what sort of jobs they often do in the week, so it could be that they hate their jobs, or they don't like that part of their life. So coming out is almost that fantasy world, I think, you know, take people away from their normal life.
Yeah, but it's so good for the soul, because quite often when we go out running, and it's first thing in the morning, isn't it? It's at daybreak, and it's just magical. And I'm sure Rob must actually get fed up of me going, oh, I need to take a photograph of this sky. It's beautiful. Oh, look at this.
But at the same point, I noticed that every time you're in your car, I bet you every time you see a yellow footpath post, you goes, where does that go then?
Yes.
You must do now.
Oh, well, yes.
We all do now.
I mean, I think that's quite unique to sort of the Leicestershire, Nottinghamshire area, isn't it? The yellow way marker, is that?
I believe that Leicestershire's got the best in the whole of the UK for way markers. They all look at Leicestershire to be like them. Because I went to Huntingdonshire the other day, and it was terrible. Thank goodness for Garmin watches.
Yes, I was going to say, because I mean, I've been out previously in areas on runs and more. Well, in fact, I was cycling, going cross country, and my partner Gareth was he was running. But we were struggling to find the way markers, because I think it had been during the sort of the lockdown time. I don't think people had been out, the farmers had been out or clearing the way. It's like, well, where on earth? Where are we? Where are we going? And actually, if it is made easier, you know, you can make your way across the footpaths as they're meant to be. But I also wanted to touch on your other passion. Well, Rob is known locally as the Culvert King. He loves taking his sort of outward bound runners on journeys through tunnels which are wet with dark with head torches on, amongst other things. Do share with us the magic of the culvert and what a culvert actually is, and where your favourite culverts are, and which ones you like and which ones you don't.
I have to be careful because they are often on private private land, so I have to be
So
careful.
we'll
I don't
talk about
incriminate.
we'll talk about the ones that are available in public arenas, Rob.
Well, culverts are simply to let a stream through to the other side of, say, a road or something, without a bridge being there. Culverts, basically, the ones I really interested in are the ones with old train bridges, etc., because they're often Victorian engineering. So what happened was I was running for a Melton club at the time, Melton Mowbray, and they used to take us what used to be through Scolford Tunnel, which is now sadly for reasons unknown been shut up. And we'd put our head torches on and go through at night, and it was great, and we'd be whooping and all sorts.
Was it echoing by any chance? Echo, echo, echo.
It was a bit scary.
Oh, right.
For the first time you go through and, there's a troll lives in here. And especially when there was chicken cages at the end, which,
yes.
So we could make up all
Were you
sorts.
going through it at night at the time
At
on this
night,
one?
yes,
Oh,
definitely. So there's a great amount of adventure. We should never lose that feeling of adventure in ourselves, no matter how old we are. And it got me running more that way and seeing what was left of this old railway. And hence, as a point, I started looking online. As from there, I started finding that there was a lot more to look with regards to old train tunnels. And I thought, wow, I'm really into this. I'd like to go and see where this train and tunnel is. Oh, what's this culvert and this water? I'm never scared of going through water. So I started looking at this forum. Okay, let's go and check that out. So now I can be found going through some of these strange tunnels and culverts occasionally on land which I'm probably not supposed to.
Well, you get lost, don't you, sometimes?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes the Garmin watch lets you down, doesn't it, Rob?
Yeah.
And you know that the culvert is going to take you to where you want to get to. So sometimes you need to just sort of do a diversion and go, thank you so much. I now know where I am.
It's very, very much fun to be wading through something knee-high of water, thinking that it was built by Isengard, Kingdom Brunel. There is a historical side to it as well.
Well, I was going to allude to that, yes, because obviously it's going to tick those boxes, isn't it? We've got adventure, we've got history, we've got running, we've got water. But it is, and that's the point of it, isn't it? That being outdoors, that running, being in going through the trails, going through the tunnels, just observing and being completely, in awe of what's around you and seeing what's there and understanding the history. It's a completely different experience to sticking on a pair of trainers and running on tarmac, which is what I have to say I've done for years. And I just used to do circuits of my local village. And now, exploring and seeing so many different parts of countryside on my doorstep that you just don't see unless you take that time to go off track. And the beauty of running, of course, is that you cover more country in a shorter space of time. Absolutely. I'll go back to the guy who works on a production line and he's got a really boring job all week. It's paid the bills, but he's not happy with it. And then he's suddenly coming off the top of Snowdon at full pelt, and he's sort of, I'm alive. Yes,
I'm alive here. This is what it means to be alive, not the job I'm doing. It's got massively gratitude which you get from that. I'm always over in Derbyshire, in the lovely Loughborough Hills, throughout my local area, exploring.
Yeah, you must actually clock up a huge amount of miles through your running, because you're forever out, either taking groups. You've got your couch to 5K. You've been doing introduction to trail running. You've got your learn to run groups. You've got the a network of people that you take out on organised runs on a regular basis, and obviously coming up will be sort of running clubs and things like that you're going to set up, because it's really only been in the last 12 to 18 months really that you've been putting all your energies into this, because obviously previously you had been working, but because of events that sort of happened and transpired, you are now in this position where you are really focusing on your passion, which is running, and in supporting other people.
I now am a self-employed coach, so best job in the world.
Best
job in the world. So my job is making people's lives the very best person that they can be. So how much more rewarding could that? I'm happy to work 24/7, Sarah.
Yes.
If someone said I need to, I want some help with my running at 3:00 in the morning, I would be there.
Tell us a little bit more about Laura. She's a great case study.
Laura was basically looking after the kids.
Yeah.
And that was it. No interest. Started running at couch to 5K. Was still smoking.
Really?
She was still
Oh, wow.
smoking, still quite a way in. Started listening a bit more to the advice I had about running better and stuff. Quickly dropped 4 stone.
That's incredible. That's
But
amazing.
a speed is terrific now. A coordination's terrific. The real beauty is that the husband and the kids are now all eating really healthy meals, and the kids are doing park run and volunteering at park run as well.
Oh, that's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. I mean, but you've got lots of stories like that of people that you've been sort of training with and running with and sort of encouraging. And I mean, just recently you've had Jo, haven't you? I know, who's a ballerina who'd never run before, and you've suddenly had her doing sort of half marathon distance. It's just
it's believing in those people. It's believing in, it's not putting barriers on yourself. It's moving forward and telling people what they can do rather than what they can't. I think there's especially in employment, there's a lot of you can't do this, you'll never do this. It's about empowering people. I think if we got behind people a lot more generally in the country, that we'd produce more, we'd be better throughout.
But I mean, just for well-being alone, to actually get out there, whether you want to run or you want to walk, but actually being out in nature, getting that fresh air, getting that exercise, getting that movement on a regular basis, and sort of embrace that we've already mentioned, sort of starting the day. I mean, we go out at 7:30 in the morning, and it is really sort of daybreak at the moment. It's a magical time to actually be outdoors. I mean, and sometimes you get it's the best of the day. Suddenly, you've got this beautiful sky. In fact, it was the end of the morning. We got red sky, blue sky, and it's just magnificent. And then you've just it just fills you full of wonderment, and it's what great feeling, what a great way, and how good for your mental health and your well-being overall.
I think it's changing attitudes of people to do that. One of the things I'd be interested in is I think obesity is a big problem at the moment, and how we talk about it and having those decisions. I think trail running might be the answer there. Yeah. Where they're not feeling judged by the cars.
Well, that's it, isn't it? Because you're away from the cars, and actually there's an awful lot of people that it's quite concerning with runners. And any runners that are listening, I would like to pass on some top tips that I've got from Rob and from Gareth as well about running. If you are running and you use the road, run into the traffic, not with the traffic behind you. And it's always best not to really run with earphones in, because you can't hear the traffic that's coming either, and you're not really aware. But I know a lot of people do like to run with earphones, but just a case in point, I was out driving the other night, and I was going through a local village at 30 miles an hour, but there's a guy running in the road wearing black, got earphones in, and I was driving up behind him, and it wasn't until I'd overtaken him, at a safe distance of course, that then he moved from the road to the pavement. Now, I know pavements have got a horrible camber on them, but equally so, the pavement was free, but he wasn't aware, because he'd got earphones in, that I was coming up behind him, and I'm more aware. But what is your advice really for runners generally in that respect?
Be seen. Be seen. I mean, it's especially the Christmas months. Everybody's got their eye on Christmas and New Year, and I've seen so many near misses. Luckily, I've not been involved in any, but just be seen, be aware what motorists do. Did you actually get into running yourself? Was it from when you were a child with your parents, or what was it that led you to running yourself? I was a cyclist, and it was getting too windy where I was living, so I sort of put on some really cheap kit. Close the door, which is the hardest thing, I must say, for any runner. It's the first time you close that door behind you. Went running for a mile around the block and came back looking like a sweaty mess.
Which is always good with running. You always know you've had a good run if you come back a sweaty mess.
Just carry on. Nobody should start running thinking they can run a marathon. It's hard enough to run to the end of the road for week one. It's the most rewarding. It definitely is the most rewarding. So you just have to keep at it. Build up, run a bit further. If you got somebody to come with you, even better. I did it for my mental health. Yeah. Because I was at home, I wasn't doing enough, yet concerned about your weight, so I had to do something, so I thought running. Unbeknownst to, I think, a lot of people, you've had other sporting successes in your past, haven't you?
other accolades and other strings to your bow. So be careful, because you've heard of Kong Kong Phooey. Well, you might have done. It's a cartoon from the 70s. Hong Kong Phooey. Go on then. Enlighten us.
It's a very, very long time ago. I don't want to say a previous life. I was, English champion and British champion in Taekwondo, but that was an awful long time ago.
No, but it's still amazing that you did that. I mean, did you do it from a child?
Yes. Yeah. It gave me an amazing amount of flexibility doing it, and it taught me a lot about respect and looking after yourself and things like that, as well as all the brilliant people I met at the time. Yeah.
Gosh, I mean, how long did you do it for?
Till about 17 or something. By that time, you get interested in other things, and
girls. You mean
girls, and you're also an angry young man at that time.
Oh, yes.
So I want to, yeah.
Yes.
So I gave it up then.
So you had all of that sort of. So I mean, I think we haven't mentioned actually, but you.
What I haven't mentioned is all the years of nightclubs and smoking.
Oh gosh, really?
Very heavy smoker, yeah.
Oh my gosh! Oh wow! You see now, knowing you now, I wouldn't have put you down as a smoker at all. So you were a smoker too.
Oh yeah, I was Motley Crue on legs.
My gosh!
I was absolutely always out down the rock clubs and everything. Yeah, terrible.
Rob still channels his rock god because he has got his long hair in a ponytail, and he's still got that sort of rock god channeled, haven't you, Rob?
See me in my leather gear when I go out.
No, I haven't seen him in running. He's usually shorts on a very cold day, I have to say. I'm going, good grief, you're making me feel cold just looking at you, lad. But yeah, I mean, actually, that brings us nicely on to one of your. You've got a really great short phrase for what you're going to be doing and channeling moving forward. It's sort of a subtitle to Rob Beer's coaching and fitness. You've got this area that you're going to move into, and I just love it because it's a great phrase. That's the word. I do like it when it comes to me eventually.
Mud, sweat and beers.
Mud, sweat and beers. I think that is just brilliant. That phrase sort of spells it up and sums it up, I should say. Sums it up beautifully, Rob.
Definitely. So I'll be looking at doing some stuff with Mud, Sweat and Beers, which will be running related, accompanied by some rather heavy music as well.
Yes, we've discussed this. Rob's looking at moving into the world of perhaps TikTok and Reels on Instagram and actually creating ranges of activities for training sessions in short bursts, but to some heavy metal music. So watch out for when that comes. But it's great though, the whole phrase, because it really does sort of sum you up with whenever you go out, Rob, you end up invariably covered in mud because it's usually it's trail running as a rule of thumb, and you get very, very sweaty, and you're with Rob Beers, hence the beers. So it's not that you are juggling beer whilst you are running. And there's not usually any beer drunk at the end, but you've got plenty of mud and sweat.
Well, I haven't got you to the fell races yet.
Oh, okay.
So that's customary to have a beer after one of those.
Okay.
It's frowned upon if not going.
I mean, that brings us on to something else, doesn't it? I mean, obviously, we've been talking about this ourselves over the last few weeks because I sort of run regularly with Rob and train with him about the races. And as I say, for me, I've not really been anybody that's gone out and done races. I'm a passionate part runner because I discovered that about 3 years ago and just love that to bits. But I've never been somebody to enter races aside from 3 half marathons, which as I've got older, they've got slower. That's another story. But we've been discussing the fact that a lot of the races have been cancelled because of all the sort of red tape and the legalities that have been involved. But as I've said to you, I think it's opening up a window of opportunity for another way of looking at things and perhaps creating something different, which perhaps brings us back to the trails.
Yes, I'd like to think so. I do see a few more starting to come back sort of now, but we seem to have lost an awful lot of events which have previously been on, and the knock-on effect is that a lot of charity money's lost and a lot of people who would do these events aren't doing them. So that's participation numbers. And we talk about having a healthier nation. Well, it means getting people participating. Also, the pandemic's made a lot of people think, well, am I as fit as I was, and why do I have to? Not every event has to be about winning it and going out for a PB. I think we park run really works in the effect that you can just go out and have a jog around with mates rather than have to go for a PB every week.
No, the park run is and has been amazing for that. I mean, I'm going to be recording a podcast with Eileen Jones, who has written a book about sort of how parkrun has changed our lives, and it's been really interesting. I'm sort of halfway through reading it at the moment, and it's really interesting because it's a lot of the things that I'd sensed myself, but when you actually read a book that's sort of quoting all the sort of figures and the stats and things like that, and it's just been such an incredible phenomenon that's been sort of created, because there are the people that want to go out there and run it and race it, because they are runners and racers, and they want to sort of test themselves on a Saturday morning. But equally so, there's it's like the likes of myself.
I believe the amount of people pushing a lot the walking side, I believe, at the moment.
No, absolutely, because they've got the tail walker at the end, so nobody will ever be last, because the tail walker will be the last person to finish. And it's just about getting out there and moving and taking part. And actually, the volunteering side of it as well, that's a massive community in itself.
Very proud, Sarah, how well you've done at the volunteering.
Oh, thank you very much. I've only done 2, but it's just, do you know what? The feel-good factor from cheering people along who are running or walking, doing it with children, doing it with a dog, however they're doing the park run. I mean, it's just brilliant. I mean, I was talking to a chap the last time I volunteered, and he was having a bit of a chunter, actually, because he'd got to the point where he was walking, and he had been running some of it. He said, I've just overtaken 3 women. He said, and then they've just disappeared off into the car park. What he meant was they hadn't finished. I don't know why. They obviously had their reasons for not finishing. But I think he'd been pushing himself to get past them, was proud of himself for getting past them, because actually he was coming back from having had, I think he said he'd broken his neck or something like that. And I said, oh my gosh, you're doing so well. And it's about that taking part. For me, you clock up your number of visits, the number of times you've been, which park runs you've been to.
Your parkrun app has got all sorts of challenges on it, hasn't it?
Oh yes, the parkrun app there's a part I've got. I've downloaded a 5K app that brings in all the information from parkrun stats, and there are so many different things that you can do. You can do the alphabet, so you do a parkrun which is started with every letter of the alphabet. You can do a parkrun. They've got 1 to 99, so it doesn't matter whether it's 214, the 14 counts, and you have to build up this grid. So you've done a park run of every number between 1 and 99. You've got the 7 C's and an R. So you've got you've got to have done 7 park runs beginning with the letter C and 1 beginning with the letter R. So. It's all sorts of, wildly just amusing things, and there's just so many different things and so many different levels of achievement. And I say the feel-good factor from just volunteering alone sets you on a high for the day. Probably, actually, more so than having completed the park run, if I'm brutally honest, because as you are cheering people along, you are cheering yourself at the same time, because your subconscious hears all that support and that positivity and that sort of upbeat energy, and you're like, yay. So volunteer, run, walk, do it. But then from there, and this is where you come in, isn't it? You can train people up to go beyond that, because the park run is something that quite often just gets people started from that walking to sort of starting to run to then wanting to do more.
Absolutely. There's a Race for Lives, which are a brilliant one at 5K, going up to the 5 miles, the 10Ks, the 10 miles, the half marathon. You've got to be, dare I say, obstacle running, trail running, cross country, trail running. It's not all about speed. It's not all about how long you can go. Running has a place for absolutely everybody, in my opinion. Yeah,
and I was just about to say, it doesn't need to cost anything, because I used to be members of gym, and I hate with a passion going on a treadmill. Just like, oh God, I'd rather be outdoors. And I like the fact that you leave the front door, you start your run, unless you've driven somewhere obviously to start the run, but there's not this sort of driving there, parking up, going into the changing rooms, getting changed, doing your thing in the gym where it's all noisy, coming back, getting showered, going to have your coffee, and then getting in the car. You can lose 3 hours just going for an hour at the gym, just by the sort of travel time, the change time and things like that. Whereas with a run from the front door, don't say regardless, unless you've driven somewhere, you're straight on it. You're straight out there. You're doing it. And, yes, you can buy expensive trainers. You can buy expensive kit. But actually, with the wonders that are sort of eBay and Facebook Marketplace and selling and shopping pages, you can pick up some great stuff that people have bought that it's too big, it's too small, it no longer fits, they've changed their mind, that hasn't been used, and you can really, Get some great bargains.
Dare I say that some of the budget makes are some of the best, best running stuff of the lot.
Yeah, what would you recommend then, Rob, if anybody's starting out?
I like the high estate stuff, which is through sportshoes.com.
Oh, okay.
I think it's very, very good material. It's very reasonable. More mile, very good on the shoes. I have had their tops and everything, but I'm really impressed with the shoes. Carrymall's not too bad, even the Sports Direct stuff.
Yeah.
I know we all smile at Sports Direct, but it's the Carrymall stuff's been around for absolutely years.
Yeah. And there's Regatta. Is Regatta much of a...
Regatta's a little bit more expensive.
Yeah.
But it's
What
okay.
about Decathlon and the likes of that?
Yeah, the only problem with Decathlon, I find that the sizing's a bit off with the clothing, but the trainers are fine.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say a lot of my gear I've had over the years, I like to buy brand new stuff, don't get me wrong, but I've picked up some amazing deals in charity shops. I'm not proud. And I say second-hand shoes that people have bought, run in twice and gone, do you know what? I don't like trail running. I've got
some of the last year's stuff from the previous model types of like M&M Direct. You can get Adidas for a third of a price. Shoes for a third of the price of the year before.
So there's always ways of doing it, and you can do it on a budget. Absolutely. So I mean, we've covered a lot of ground, but this is the Harnessing Happiness podcast, of course, Rob. So what makes you a happy person? Don't tell me. Running.
Well, yes, it is. It is absolutely. It's running. It's great. It's great to get them PBs. The endorphin. You go for a run, you come back. The endorphins are flowing, and you come back and you start. Doing your knicker drawer or whatever because
your leather trousers and your
you start doing
your
all
leather
those,
jacket drawer.
You come back and you do all those jobs which you normally wouldn't do because you're enthused. But at the same point, I'm enthused by everybody I work with. Satisfaction. I went, oh Rob, I've just got my PB or I ran so well tonight. I didn't think I had the energy after such a hard day at work. That's the satisfaction in it. Other people's satisfaction is my satisfaction.
Yeah, because I mean, you get so many notifications, don't you, with the people that you work with and you hear from, and it's just like it's pinging all the time, isn't it, at the moment?
It's absolutely at the time. Yeah.
You do this running, and so that has helped you overcome challenging situations in your life, I guess, as
well.
Yes,
yeah. I've been under secondary mental health care for 22 years, so
wow.
No pill has ever been as good as running.
Gosh, that's a good recommendation.
I know the figures out there is getting nearer to 1 in 3 all the time towards people who are suffering. I've never found it so good. Yeah, it's not always easy to get out there. It's very hard to start. There's some very, very good places which can help you start if you need to. But for me, it's been absolutely phenomenal. In moving forward, in overcoming barriers, agoraphobia, depression, anxieties, and I'll recommend that, and I'll happily talk about it till the cows come home.
Yeah, I know it's great. I mean, what you're doing for other people now and supporting other people, because you are really now, for all of the jobs that you've done, you are actually now in alignment with what you are supposed to be doing, with your true calling.
I've known this 20 odd years ago.
Yes, but now you're here, and that's the thing. The beauty is there's always a starting point, and to the starting point, it's always in the very present moment. So that's awesome. So come on, to finish then, top tips for the listeners. What can they do to make themselves? What are your top tips for happiness to help them?
Well, of course, go to my website, Rob Beers Coaching and Fitness. Top tips for happiness. Don't be afraid to change yourself.
Yeah.
Always look what is limiting you, and never ever put a limit on what you can do. I think we're amazing as human beings. I think we have the capacity to adapt. Who would have thought that you could run in the pitch black without a head torch, off-road and mud, everything? But it's possible because as human beings we totally adapt.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I'm testament to that. I mean, I never thought I would be running forwards with my hands down by my sides, going headlong down a hill with a pair of trainers on in a muddy field. But actually, the other thing that's really interesting, just as a side note on that, was running through muddy ploughed fields, which if you try and walk through, it's really clarty, your feet sort to stick. But actually, once you've been trained by Rob to run as a little gazelle, who knew that I could be gazelle-like? You're not spending that much time actually on your feet, are you? Because you're limiting the time that your feet touch the ground by almost skipping through it.
Exactly. And as the other thing, you've got one life. You may as well live it.
Absolutely. I'm all for living my life in the full. I just have to stop myself from overdoing it, because I'll be out there doing everything all of the time.
I hear all the excuses. Well, I haven't got time to run. I'm so busy. If you haven't got 10 minutes to do hill reps on, and what have you got time for it? Are you really doing everything every second of the day? I don't think you are.
I've had some sort of challenging times just recently myself, and I've through illness and just getting sort of unfit and different things. Well, anyway, we don't going to go into all of that, but it's made me take a step back and realise what I've had to do, and it's about adjusting. It's about looking at what you're doing too much of, where you need to pull back, because you've got a certain amount of time. But if you're giving all your time over to work, as I have been over sort of a good part of the last sort of 6 to 12 months, you've got to rein it in, because actually your life is about enjoying your life. Which, not to say that I wasn't enjoying my life, but I was doing too much of everything and trying to fit too much in at the same time. So I've sort of pulled bits back so I can start to free more time up. So I'm not knackered, and I'm not trying to sort of pull it all into a ridiculous amount of time. So it's adjusting, like you've said, it's adjusting what's important to you. And sometimes it just takes, you have to be firm with yourself and take that step back and really have a chat with yourself and go, right, okay, I can change this, because we aren't our behaviour. We can change at any time. It's about taking that responsibility for your own actions and doing what you need to do, and actually getting out into the fresh air, doing the running, embracing the countryside, getting to know the history, all the things that you can train people and teach people about with all that you do. Is so good for the soul. Well, in my opinion anyway. So how do people get hold of you? I know you've already sort of touched on it jokingly, but seriously, how do they find you, Rob?
Well, I don't think there's many people called Rob Beers in the UK. So if you type in Rob Beers Coaching and Fitness or Rob Beers, you should be able to find me in any good search engine.
Marvellous. Oh, well, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, absolute and utter pleasure.
It's been brilliant. We always have a good old natter whenever we meet, which is usually about 3 times a week, to be perfectly frank. However, so thank you so much, Rob.
Thank you, Sarah.
And this has been myself, Sarah J Naylor, at Harnessing Happiness, which of course you know because you've tuned in with the fab Rob Beers. So as you know, you can get hold of him by just tapping into Google search engine or wherever it is, Rob Beers Coaching and Fitness. And until next time, thank you again for listening. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please do rate, review, follow, subscribe, whatever it is that you normally do. Take care. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to the Harnessing Happiness podcast with Sarah J Naylor. If you took value from the content, please follow the show on your podcast app. And to find out more about Sarah's ape mindset, visit sarahjnaylor.com. That's Sarah J